The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of M.A.P.S Media or its affiliates. This content is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice, political endorsements, or the official stance of any organization mentioned. Basically, we talk shit. You listen, and M.A.P.S Media stays drama-free. And this podcast is not for children, because we cuss.
They say democracy dies in darkness, but what if it's dying in broad daylight, while we're all watching, scrolling, and trying to keep the lights on in our own lives? This isn't a funeral episode. This is a mirror. Let's talk about the state of democracy right now. Just me, just us.
Yo, it's time to rise, make your choice, we vote to amplify your voice. We vote to breaking through, every voice matters, yes, you. Yes, we can. We vote.
The democracy mood check in America right now. Voters are afraid of authoritarianism, court rollbacks, rights being repealed, and it feels like chaos.
This is not about fighting crime. This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue city, in a blue state, to try and intimidate his political rivals. This is about the President of the United States and his complicit lackey, Stephen Miller, searching for ways to lay the groundwork to circumvent our democracy.
What keeps you up at night?
I would say the state of our democracy. I am really very interested in getting people to focus and to invest and to pay attention to what is happening in our country and in our government.
I feel guilty because I voted for Trump twice.
The worst decision I ever made.
The GOP is suppressing voters and gerrymandering. We voted, and now what?
The nation's capital put on notice, awaiting the arrival of hundreds of National Guard troops as the president places Washington, D.C. under federal control.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back.
President Trump.
And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of the city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no family.
Where President Trump is taking over more of the nation's capital, announcing he will extend emergency powers for another 30 days and take control of the famed Union Station.
What is democracy supposed to be? Ideally, fairness, equality, participation, but currently, we just see gerrymandering, apathy, disinformation, and people being left out.
In the filing, the NAACP claims the proposed districts amount to racial gerrymandering and would prevent Black and Latino voters from electing candidates of their choice. The map recently passed by both chambers of the Texas legislature. Texas Republicans have testified under oath that racial gerrymandering does not exist in the current map. They say the map is based on political performance. In a statement, NAACP Texas President Gary Bledsoe said in part, "We call on Texans of every background to recognize the dangers of this moment. Our democracy depends on ensuring that every person is counted fully, valued equally, and represented fairly."
And who's being counted out? And why that matters? We keep getting told to vote harder. But what happens when your vote is thrown out, closed out, or washed out by money and power?
Some politicians decide to draw partisan lines. Why do they do this? Well, sometimes they're forced to because of a census. Other times, because of political opportunity. Sometimes by putting more city voters who tend to vote Democratic in the same district as suburban voters, you can make a district more likely to vote Democrat. Republicans can do the same thing by putting more conservative rural voters into a suburban district, making it more likely to vote Republican.
Black Alabamians are still underrepresented in Congress. Under the state's new Republican-drawn congressional map, only one out of the state's 7 districts is predominantly black. But the 2020 census found that black people make up almost 2/7 of Alabama's voting age population. So this map is probably a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. which passed partly as a result of the marches in Selma and elsewhere in Alabama. While minority groups aren't automatically entitled to proportional representation in the House, the Voting Rights Act does require that they have equal opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. It's readily possible to draw 2 congressional districts that are majority black. So voting rights advocates sued over the map, and in January they got the ruling they were hoping for. A 3-judge panel found that the map was most likely an illegal racial gerrymander and struck it down, ordering the Alabama legislature to draw a new map that, quote, includes 2 districts in which black voters either comprise a voting age majority or something quite close to it. Alabama promptly appealed the ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court,
and in the meantime,
the court reinstated the gerrymandered map.
Republicans have placed black lawmakers nationwide in their crosshairs and have waged a flat-out attack on their seats through gerrymandering. In the redrawing of congressional maps, several black Democrats have been pushed into districts where either the black voting pool has been severely diluted or they are forced to run against another Democratic incumbent. Either way, the end result has become less political power for black communities.
What is working and what's worth fighting for? Even in all this mess, people are still winning. City council races, courtroom decisions, community organizing. Democracy is messy, but it's still moving.
Democrat Kalen Dre has pulled off a victory in a special election for the Iowa Senate, flipping a Republican-held seat and breaking the GOP supermajority in the chamber for the first time in 3 years.
All right, not only are Democrats likely to win the House in 2026, it looks like we could actually win the Senate as well. This would be a complete flip of Congress. Donald Trump would have no control of either chamber. Democrats can flip the 2026 Senate if Roy Cooper wins in North Carolina, the former governor who's heavily favored to win.
Special elections in Pennsylvania flipped a state legislators' House majority to Democrats. Let me explain. Special elections took place for a seat both in the House and Senate for the state of Pennsylvania. The House election went to Dan Gogenauer. Democrats now have majority control of the state House by a single seat. Following there was also a close Senate election between Democrat James Andrew Malone and Republican Josh Parsons in Lancaster County for the 36th district's vacant Senate seat. Democrat Malone won with 482 votes, or a 0.89% lead. Lancaster County overwhelmingly voted for Trump in the 2024 presidential election with 57.5% of the votes. A Democratic win does not tip majority state Senate control to Democrats, but does change the seat division to 27 Republicans versus 21 Democrats.
Some breaking news here from the highest court in California. Republicans had brought forward a lawsuit challenging the legality of California redrawing its maps. That's obviously going to be a big referendum in front of Californians on November 4th. So they've brought that in front of the California Supreme Court, which has just ruled. Can you explain what happened?
Yeah, the lawsuit got dismissed, and it got dismissed in a way that is humiliating for the Republicans.
So what can we do? Democracy doesn't survive because we watched it. It survives because we act in whatever way we can. So make sure you verify voter registration, get involved locally, donate to community journalism, and start conversations. And just refuse to be silent.
So we've made it to the final countdown. And for those of you that this is the first time you are being immersed in the world of Leise Winny, this is what I do. I will periodically make sounds. Yes, when I'm interviewing other people, I try to be incredibly serious. But when I'm by myself and I'm quite tired, I'm just going to put that out there. There's a lot going on in the world and people, we're tired. We are physically tired, mentally tired. We are tired. And I also want to say thank you for sitting through that very melodramatic music and framing I did. I really wanted, I was trying, I'm not very good at that type of stuff, but I was trying to really show how serious the tone was. So I appreciate you guys. If you made it thus far, appreciate you. And I want to talk about where we are right now, especially when it comes to democracy, because during the 2024 election, and in this series in alone, we talked a lot about the 2024 election because that's really what the show was based on. I wanted to go back and look at millennial and Gen Z voting habits and voting patterns and what impacted that election and what changed the outcome of the election. And one of the biggest things that Kamala Harris ran on was democracy, right? We have to save democracy. And I don't know if as a society at that time, we took it seriously about how fragile democracy is. I think a lot of us
assume that democracy is just a given, especially in the United States of America. It was like we will just have all these rights, all of these things will be, no matter who is in power. It doesn't matter because we have so many checks and balances. And as we've seen over the past 8 months, checks and balances don't mean a lot when the people who are in power don't care about checks and balances. And this is what a lot of us in America signed up for, whether willingly or unwillingly. This is what we ask for. So, on the precipice of watching the National Guard go from DC, the nation's capital, hold up, back up, Wayne's World Party Time, excellent, let's go back. Technically, we've seen the military in LA, then DC, now Chicago, potentially Chicago and Baltimore. And this will just continue to go down and down and down and down and down as he pushes for power, and there are no limits on the things that he can do. Now, where are we? We talked about this in the first episode. We talked about this in the second, third, fourth, fifth. We had 10, technically 10 beautiful episodes. We had 9 regular episodes, 1 bonus episode, because a lot of people were asking, like, we have this information, but what can we do? And one of the ways that you can really impact change, especially in a time like this, when you have people who want to be oligarchs, right? We are in fascism or potential fascism, yes, but there's also a level of oligarchy that is happening. So when we're seeing all of this stuff go down, people were asking, like, what can we do? And the biggest way to impact, if you don't want to stand in the streets, which is fine, everybody is not a fighter, everybody's not going to be on the front lines, you can use your wallet. It is one of the easiest ways to impact change. We've seen this, like we saw it with Target. Not only did Target lose money, Target continues to lose money. And those Black people, Black voters, we have not gone back into Target, and Target continues to go down a deep spiral despite them bringing in Kai Cenat, who is one of the biggest streamers in the world for a brand, and we have Tabitha and all of these other people that have these big brands that came in there, and they just didn't really move the way they would have moved because Black people, I think, slowly but surely are trickling back into Target, if we're just being honest, but not in the huge amounts. Now my Black people out there, I'm a little upset because, like, how did y'all skip Walmart? Did y'all not check Walmart's track record? I get that Target made the facade of being us, right? Like, Target was for I'm just going to say the bourgeois of it. They were very inclusive. And then there was this facade that that's who they were, when it was always capitalism. And capitalism doesn't care what your race is. They care about the money. And if the money says, hey, jump on this bandwagon and pretend you care about Black people, capitalism is going to jump on the bandwagon and pretend they care about Black people. When it turns around and capitalism goes, oh, well, now we're back on the white supremacy, then capitalism is back on white supremacy, because capitalism only follows money. That is all it cares about, is money. And I'm not a historian at all. So please go find reputable historians to follow. Do something safe with your time if that's what you want to do. But I can give you my opinion. I can give you my opinion. And one of the reasons why I think slavery ended, yes, there were things that are actually historically documented of why the war ended. There were battles that were won that the South couldn't overcome, the mobilization of the North with trains and railroads and stuff like that. There was lots of things. But one of the biggest things I believe was the fact of capitalism. For the country to grow, it was not economically feasible to continue slavery. And I really think that's what a lot of the people in the North and the banking districts really were seeing, is that we can't keep this up and make all this money. Like, we need more employees, we need more workers. We have the cotton gin now. It's more costly for us to do. We can't invest, we can't grow. We are industrializing in a way that we don't have enough bodies in order to fulfill.
And I think that that is a bigger part of it that we don't talk about, because it's not that slavery in the North was any better. Like, even Dr. Martin Luther King went to the North. He went to Chicago and went, whoa, this covert racism is so much worse than the overt racism, because I don't know who's my friend or not. And I'm getting into a situation before I'm getting into a situation, and I not know what types of people I got. Like, it was a level of subtle racism that we deal with now that in the Deep South back in the 60s, they weren't necessarily dealing with. Now, the brutality of the South is something no one should ever see. It should have never happened. It should never be, because the brutality of the South was worse. But the impact of the races of the North was more lasting. That is still happening today. Okay? But I digress. Let me get off my soapbox. Where are we now? Right now, we're still in a democracy, despite what people are saying. It's like we're in fascism, not on paper. Okay, on paper, we're still in a democracy, which is kind of how fascism starts. Like, we think everything is fine, and I think we've gotten to a place in America where we are pretending like everything is fine. And a lot of people still going to work, still trying to buy their Shein, even though you got tariffs and the loophole has now closed. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you may have to pay that money once your item gets to the port. Okay, when it gets to the port, which I had a conversation with someone, and there's still a lot of confusion about who pays the tariffs. It's always going to be the corporation or company or entity that's picking that item up from the port, which are American companies, and the money will be passed down to American consumers. But it is the American company. It is not the foreign entity that's paying it. And we've seen a pattern from the Trump administration for a long time that this is what they wanted to do. And the thing that shocked me the most is how little people remember about Trump's first term. It was almost like people wanted to pretend like that first term didn't happen. And the whole point of him winning for a lot of people, and this is something we really harped on in this series, was that it was about the eggs. And one of the things I said in each and every episode, it was never about the eggs. It was never about the eggs, because it wasn't. It was always about a feeling. People in America and many other places, we don't vote for anything. We vote against it. Always have, always will. We vote against something. We don't vote for anything. And that's part of the problem in our country, right? Because we don't vote for anything. A lot of people, when they look at who they vote for, it's like, it's not that I'm voting for this candidate because I love this candidate, because you often will hear, especially Democrats, oh, they're not perfect. Not a perfect candidate. That was the lesser of two evils, and which that was a episode that I wanted to have, the lesser of two evils conversation, and how dangerous that word was in this election, especially for Kamala Harris's team. And I think they should have talked about that more, if I'm being honest, and brought that up, that whole lesser of two evils thing. They talked about saving democracy, but not that part. Not as much as they should have. But the whole lesser of two evils thing makes people think that there is an equivalent, especially when it comes to democracy. And that's not, and never was, what was happening. People were voting on a feeling of feeling superior, because he was talking to people that felt like they were losing something because of the privilege that most of them will say they don't have. Like, they feel like I should have more and these other people have more than me. But where does that feeling come from? What gives you the right that you should somehow be further ahead than somebody else with absolutely no basis for it? You just feel like you should. Where does that come from? What is that? What is that feeling? Because if you dig a little deeper into the feeling, like you get a little deeper, like a little bit deeper, you'll find out what that is. You may not like it, but you're going to find out. And in Trump's first term, going back to Trump's first term, people pretended like the railroad train that is coming through our front door wasn't there in episode 1, season 1. Episode 1, season 1, his finale, like I said a billion gajillion times, was COVID. That was his finale. During his first term, there were so many operational shortcuts and a lot of civilians that were harmed. There was the 2017 I think it's Yakla raid in Yemen during his first term, which drew some criticism over civilian casualties. We now see the SEAL Team 6, where they killed a bunch of North Korean civilians from a failed operation, and they did not inform Congress on those matters, which that just came out, which potentially shows that they broke the law. Yes, the president has some discretion in what he does, but if it's a major mission like that, where you have a lot of casualties because of errors that the SEAL team made, that is something that Congress should have been briefed on. So it is a possibility that the Trump administration broke the law again. All right, like that's not even just broke; they do it all the time. It's almost second nature to the Trump administration. So it's very similar to what happened in 2017. It's very similar to what just got disclosed about North Korea, like I was saying, and the atrocities of not only of them killing those innocent civilians, they made sure that they also, this is very brutal, graphic, stabbed their lungs so that their bodies would sink to the ocean floor and no one would find out. And mind you, all of this was happening when Trump was trying to have a conversation with North Korea, because at the time he was trying to get as much information as possible. Back in 2016, he was seen as one of the biggest threats. At that point, I don't even think it was Russia. I really think it was North Korea at that point. One of the biggest threats was North Korea. And so they were trying to get information from them, all while they were going to be having a summit together. The summit did happen, but nothing came of it. And then North Korea went on to fire more missiles than they had fired in literal years. People just overlook that, I guess. The family separations, we forgot about that. The 2018 zero tolerance policy, which produced thousands of separations of children from their family. And those children all of them never got replaced with their families. They got lost in the system. A lot of them, those children were mentally scarred, not to mention probably physically abused as well. That just kind of got swept under there as well. And then he had a war on oversight in the first term. We saw him firing inspector generals in the first term. There was a large purge and a revolving door of terrible characters that came through Trump 1.0. And we just forgot. Right? We just utterly forgot and didn't care. Trump's Jobs and Tax Cut Act, which a lot of the middle class initially saw a tax decrease and then over time saw tax increases, was Trump. A lot of people blame Biden, but it was Trump. It was because those temporary tax cuts that he gave the middle class so that they would spoon feed them into these tax cuts for the wealthy, it evaporated. Just like this big, beautiful bill. Same. This isn't new. This bait and switch has been happening forever. And now that we're here, he's passed a lot of things.
the big beautiful bill is one which will have impacts to not only American low income, middle income Americans, the elderly, because they're going to cut Medicaid and Medicare. It's a bunch of people that will be impacted. But one thing that I can tell you about that is that the deficit is going to balloon. And not only is it going to impact us now, it's going to impact us for years to come. We're still feeling reverberations from things that Reagan did or Clinton did, even. Like, because when you look at the whole, what they did with Ukraine, and under Clinton, Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons with the agreement that the U.S. would always protect Ukraine, and look where we're at. Okay? So things that presidents do have long-standing impact, even if we don't necessarily feel it on day one. He got rid of a bunch of aid across the world. We've watched people die. Israel ramped up efforts to really annihilate Palestinians. The expedited removal of people, so much so that people who should not be being expedited or stopped, or they're getting caught up in this. We're going back to the stop and frisk era where people are being racially profiled. His executive orders are restricting entries, and it's empowering white nationalism and a bunch of other things. It's creating a very hostile attitude in America towards people that are minority and or other. Not to mention, he cut the Medicaid work requirements and benefits will be cut. The consumer finance protection rolled back. Like, they're just doing things that hurt regular Americans. So anytime you watch somebody you watch their actions and who this will impact, and why his own supporters of MAGA, who mostly don't fit into this very rich bracket because there's not enough of them, you would think they would see it. Rolling back that banks are capped on overdraft fees and late fees and all of that, and he doesn't care. Rolling back that the airports have to refund customers, rolling that back. He's requiring federal proof of citizenship in an executive order. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening. And this is going to impact real Americans. Like, when you talk about overdraft fees, that's going to impact real Americans. Medicaid cuts are going to impact real Americans. We're not talking about people, like, when I'm saying real, I mean the majority. Let me change my language. A majority of Americans. Because the hospitals in these areas who depend on Medicaid won't be able to stay open. So if you're in a rural area, you're going to be impacted. If you're not in a rural area, the cost to go to the hospital and to the doctors is going up. Those costs got to go somewhere. When these people, because they're not going to stop getting sick, when they have to go to the doctor, when they have to go to the hospital, where do you think those costs are going to go? To you. That's like when I've been telling people this for years, like when and if people steal enough from a store, right? You can get one over, two over on the store, but the people you will impact the most are the people who live in that area, because eventually they're going to start raising the prices in that area. It's going to make it harder for those people to go into the store and shop. Everything will be behind glass shelves and keys. It will impact the people in that community. And that's exactly what's happening now with Trump and the Trump regime. The tariffs are going to sink small businesses that depend on items from overseas. They just will. Especially if they're also relying on small imports. Yeah. That's going to impact the de minimis rule. He got rid of it. The loophole. It will impact small businesses. Not to mention all the executive orders that he released on freedom of speech. Now, I will say that from a standpoint of the courts, Harvard just won that Trump withholding funding from Harvard I believe, was found to be illegal. We're starting to see the courts are pushing back a little bit, and there have been some wins in the courts that are protecting democracy. The issue is that eventually we will set these court rulings up to the Supreme Court. And no, the Supreme Court doesn't take every case that comes to it. They get tons and tons and tons and tons of potential cases each year, and they only select a small percentage, a few, that they actually will hear. So there's a few of these cases that probably are going to make its way to the Supreme Court. And with that being said, it could have lasting impacts since the Supreme Court is very much conservative. Very conservative. Where do I think we are really headed? Because we are seeing the erosion of democracy in a way that we've not seen in a long time. And I've seen an article, I think it was in the New York Times, said what stands between us and losing our democracy is who the Democrats pick as leaders. And that scares me a little bit. First of all, the Democrats are not perfect. All right. They're not a perfect side. But I will say that when you're looking at the money, the GOP is still, despite all the stuff that's happening, the GOP is still outraising Democrats. And listen, Democrats, it appears that it appears that the only thing that you're doing is asking for money. And if that is what it's appearing to be, people are going to tune it out. People are going to shut that down. Like, I was getting so many emails, I had to unsubscribe. We need y'all to do more than just send out funding. And I get it. You need the money, but we need you to do more than that. This is another reason why we had that whole argument about people getting paid, potential left-leaning creators getting paid in order to talk about democracy during the election, which is not a bad thing. Oh no, we're trying to protect democracy. But people are saying it's the transparency of it. The issue is, it's not the money, it's the system. It's not that the creators, it is the money. It's not that the creators got paid. It is the system. The system is what you don't like. And I think that we need to get the money out of the politics, which is also an episode that we were supposed to have about the money in politics, season 2. Because it is a very big part of our system. It is a very big part of what it is that we do and how we operate. Because if the election seasons weren't so long, like the campaign seasons weren't so long, people wouldn't need all that money. If we didn't have all of these, like the Supreme Court ruling of Citizens United back in with Hillary Clinton in 2010, I'm sorry, this wouldn't have happened. Now you can have super PAC money and you don't have to tell where the money is coming from. You don't have to disclose it. All of this dark money is in there because the system is broken. It also limits who can run, and it limits how much they can actually make a difference, because these people need the money. And in order to get the money, you have to get the money from major donors. And if you're getting the money from major donors, you're going to listen to the donors. That's just how it is. Or you're going to get 1,000 emails a day asking for money. So either one is incredibly annoying. And I think that the Democrats still haven't figured out who they are. And that's quite sad. It seems like a very easy fix to figure out who you are and to just stand up. I think there were a lot of Democrats, including Muriel Bowser, who is the mayor of Washington, D.C., who thought if she bended the knee, she would be okay. And if I'm not mistaken, Muriel Bowser is up for election next year.
And the impact of the people in DC and the way that the residents have been talking about it, not Trump, because Trump's saying, oh, it went down, da, 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 da. Of course it went down. People don't feel comfortable walking around with the military out there. But what happens when the military is no longer there? Because you already have them standing out there and you're activating them for 29 days so you don't have to pay them, and then you're going to reactivate them or get different National Guards. That's kind of cruel. You have them out there doing lawn work because there's nothing to do. But Muriel Bowser is a perfect example of maybe she's trying to get some other type of position, sort of like Eric Adams. Okay, maybe that's the goal. But the issue is, do you bet on Trump and ruin your career? Because once you go on that side, you can't come back. Like, you are forever cemented into his legacy. And it appears that the DC may have sued for the deployment of the National Guard, which is crazy because I thought just like 2 weeks ago, she was talking about how much it was working. And she's increasing the salary of the police officers in DC. And I'm a little confused by what Muriel Bowser is doing, but maybe she knows. Mayor, I don't know. But I think in that very liberal city, I think she should be concerned for re-election. I'm not so sure. And maybe that's what she's banking on, that Trump will somehow go, yes. But I'm like, listen, Miss Bowser, he doesn't have a great track record with black women. Look at all the black women in his orbit. He does not have a great track record with black women. She doesn't have a great track record with black men, but it's a little better. Not black women. It's not looking good. And I think at this point, the Democrats, because the political pendulum has swung so far right that it can't do anything unless... I'm not going to try to push that the election system is broken, because if you do that, it actually plays into the hands of Trump, because people won't vote. If people don't trust that their vote matters, people won't vote. And so I don't want to push that narrative either. But let's say, outside of any irregularities, because he's already sided with Putin, that I don't like mail-in ballots and mail-in voting, and it's bad because they want to be able to do what they did. Anywho, the political pendulum should swing back really far left. It would not shock me if there's a lot of blue seats that are gained in this upcoming midterm. It would not shock me if there's a lot of governors that are blue. Like, it's not going to shock me. And I think that that's what the Republicans are fearing. And the fact that they get afraid, because people do bad things when they're afraid. And this is why I think the Democrats' focus is still off. Instead of focusing, because what I've seen is the same thing I saw in 2024. And I'm like, it didn't work in 2024. It's not working now. I think the Democrats need to be a lot meaner, because you're going to lose people regardless. And we saw that when you were trying to be super nice. You still lost people. You're going to lose those people. The people that are on edge, you're going to lose them regardless. You need to be a lot meaner, and you need to call Trump out. For whatever reason, a lot of the Democrats have been kind of tiptoeing around calling him out directly. And that is the only way that we get through this. Some of you may not get reelected, but it's either you care about democracy, which was crazy that Biden, they cared about democracy, and then it was nothing. You either care about democracy and you're willing to lose your seat, or you don't. And I think that the Democrats need to do a better job. I think Gavin Newsom has done an amazing job with his team of really playing into the hands of the stupidity of what a lot of people ignore for Trump and how hypocritical it is. I love it. And I think that more people should be doing that. Do we need everybody doing that? Absolutely not. But doing it in a way where the mirror isn't ridiculous, love it. They're doing it in a perfect way. And I think more Democrats should be calling, every time Trump does something, they should call it out. Call out the hypocrisy, call out who this is being impacted with. We already saw in 2024, it was so easy for these headlines and clickbait to go and get people to get all up in arms. We saw that just with the Chorus app. It's so easy that you might as well play into it. Trump didn't run away from a lot of the things. He either completely flat out denied it or they played into it. And I think at this point, the Democrats have to play into it. You have got to, and you have got to call him out. And all the Republicans, you got to call them out. We should have talking points. Every Democrat should be saying the same thing over and over and over. No, we do not want to be the cult that is the Republicans. I want to say that. So this Project 2029, I'm glad the guy who was trying to fund it got caught up and found out with the whole Kawhi Leonard debacle where they created this sham company to pretty much circumvent the NBA cap with the Clippers. The Clippers owner, Bollimer, and the owners of this company, I forgot what it's called, it's like a tree planting company, decided that they were going to find a way to keep Kawhi Leonard on the Clippers. And this is the guy that was funding Project 2029. You do not put your name on something that is destroying democracy and then flip it around. Like, that's terrible marketing. And that's the same things that the Democrats have been doing for a long time. And I was like, stop that. Like, stop doing the same thing you've been doing. At this point, you have an opportunity to really make a big difference in the Democratic side. Big difference. It's just up to you with how you want to play it. And when it comes to the GOP, I know a lot of people talk about how splintered and fractured the Democrats are because, yes, the DNC right now is reeling with, they don't have the money, they have a lot of infighting. It's not in a great state. But the GOP isn't either. It's gilded. They appear to hold this strong front, but inside it's really cracking. Because you have a lot of people that are starting to think about, what does my legacy look like? Now, they don't have the backbone to stand up to it. And this will absolutely, inevitably crash the Republican Party. Because once Trump is gone, and he will be, because that's how mortality works, where do the Republicans stand? They've given everything to MAGA. And MAGA is hanging on by one very frail elderly man. Followings like that don't transfer to the next leader. They just don't. J.D. Vance is not commanding this massive MAGA following. The Republican Party is going to fall apart because they are no longer a party. They are following Trump. And they are in trouble because he is not going to be around forever. I don't know what the Republicans are doing, but they too are in trouble. And they have to eat all of this. So once these gifts that Trump has put out for the rich finally make its mark, and it will come back for payment, and the payment is coming from the American public, the only people that will be at fault are the Republicans. And I need the Democrats to say that. I don't care if y'all friends outside of work. I need you to say it. I need you to talk about all the crazy things that Pam Bondi has done as Attorney General. I need you to call it out. I need you to call out that she's from Florida, where Jeffrey Epstein was charged. I need you to call it out when he got that sweetheart deal. I need you to call it out. I need you to call out the hypocrisy that is RFK Jr. I need you to call it out, which we haven't seen yet. And the night is still young. Remember, in the first term, there was a lot of revolving doors. The night is still young. The night is still young. And the part that scares me is that Trump's replacements get much worse. I don't know who would replace them. Rita from the Power Rangers or Frida from the Power Rangers. I don't know. Zordon. I don't know. Because you can't get any more evil. Jason, I don't know who they got. Chucky wife. Like, I don't know who's next. Because the picks that he has now are pretty bad. On a grand scale. For a multitude of reasons. So many, you can't even just go over just one. But what do we need to do to change what's happening so that democracy does not go away and fade away into the distance? We definitely need to make sure that we are rebuilding oversight. IGs matter, and Trump got rid of a lot of them. We need to restore voting protections. We have to depoliticize data and science, which is like the mess that is the CDC right now is terrifying. That's what happened was when you have a lawyer. Never mind. I'm gonna leave it alone. With a brain worm, I'm gonna leave it alone. We need to make sure that we are calling this out. We need to make sure that we are calling this out. Every time something happens, we got to be loud about it. Every time something happens, we need to be loud about it because mainstream media is not, because they're at the mercy of the FCC and all the murders that they have and the money and the donors, and they're not going to do it. We, the American people, the public, John Q, because the most powerful thing you have is this. This. I don't care if you got 2 followers. I don't care if you have 52 followers. You need to be talking. And if we all are on there talking about what's happening and we are giving the information, the right information, accurate information, even if it's not always positive for the Democrat, it doesn't have to be. Democrats aren't perfect. That's not what this is about. It's about protecting freedoms and democracy. So until we have that, we can't do anything else. So make sure you're loud. Make sure you are using your money and you're using your money and you're using your actions to support companies that listen to what the American public is saying. And make sure you're finding out who your representatives are, because some people still don't know. Make sure you know when the elections are, because some people still don't know. It is a quick Google search. Make sure you know what's on the ballot. Make sure you know what's on the ballot. Who are you voting for? What type of propositions are on this ballot? Like, what are you voting for? And this has to be you wanting to do that, so that you are prepared. Find out who your representatives are. Reach out to them. Tell them. I'm worried. Because a lot of people think just because people are poor, it means that they are dumb. And I work in a area and in a place where I believe a lot of people that I've talked to think that, and couldn't be further from the truth. Just because you don't have money doesn't mean that you don't know or care about what's going on. Let them know. Let them know. Even if you don't have the language, let them know how you feel. Let them know. And then you have to keep on them. Mm-hmm. You got to keep on them. Keep on there, keep it on. Because they're not going to listen on the first try. They're not going to listen on the second. They're not going to listen on the third. It may take a few tries, but keep on them. Keep on moving. Is that the song? I think that's the song. Yay! All right. So here we are. Let's look at the democracy meter. So that is leaning negative, not because voters have lost agency, but because institutions that possess the truth, like the inspector generals and scientists, are being compromised. They are putting people in position that are going to bend the knee.
That is the first telltale sign that something is wrong, right? That democracy is being threatened. So I need you to know this. They don't want you to get facts anymore. They're not going to report on jobs anymore. We're not going to do that. We're not going to tell you about the president's health. We're not going to do that. And the Chevron rule ending, which I talked about a while back on Millennials Anonymous. Well, I guess it wasn't Millennials Anonymous. It was on another platform. Is a very important rule that a lot of people overlooked. It can be very complicated. It can be very convoluted. But please go look at the Chevron rule and what that means, because it means that you will no longer have those experts in place to make decisions about expert level challenges and decisions. It is now all going to be based on the political environment and sphere, which is a scary place to be. The economy is cooling off. We now have less jobs than that are out. And we have less jobs that have been created and more people who are unemployed. We are headed down that road. Millennials, I know. Hold on. I know. Hold on to your wigs. Because we are going down this road again, this horrible, horrifying yellow brick road that keeps following us. And it begins with recession. Almost vomited. It's coming again. It's coming back. I can feel it coming up in my throat. Okay. It's coming. So that's problematic. Okay. Now, when it comes to the election, this is going to be the biggest meter of them all, because the other ones we've been needing to start moving. But this one will really show us how well we are responding to the fact that the democracy meter is tilting away from democracy. The election, the midterms. They say governors' races are stress tests. There's been a lot of redistricting legislation. Texas passed through a very gerrymandered map. Utah blocked a very gerrymandered map. You see, California is going to be putting potentially five new seats in California. New York is saying they may follow suit. Some other blue states are saying that they may follow suit. Maryland is saying that they may follow suit. Gerrymandering is never a great thing. And then, of course, you have the case out of Louisiana with their very gerrymandered maps that will be some additional arguments will be made in October of this year. And that will have an impact on the Voting Rights Act if the Supreme Court decides to uphold the very, very racist voting map that Louisiana has. So we'll see. We'll see. So it will shape the 2026 battlefield of what's happening into 2028. But we got to watch out. So do your research. Go find out who your representatives are. Find out what they're doing. And find out what laws are sitting in Congress. Okay? Go to the White House page. I know you might... It's terrifying. But go to the White House page and see what executive orders he is signing, so you can see what's happening. At this point, we need people to be engaged. There's no more, I get on. It's not, I don't do politics. Everything you do is political. Down to the time it is in your area. The system of measurement we use was political. Buka butt. Everything is political. I need you to get engaged. I need you to get informed. We need you, Pooh. We need you. And that's why we can really impact change if we vote. And I know people have said, I don't want to vote. I don't want to vote. Voting doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything. If it didn't mean anything,
According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which sent me requesting some funding in the mail, and I got this the other day when I opened it, more than 24 states would not have passed voter suppression laws, with more in the works, if voting didn't matter. I need you to vote. And I need you to vote informed. Because there's too many people that voted for Trump that said, I didn't know this is what his policies were. It's good to have a vibe, but it doesn't work with policy and fact. I need you to know. I need you to be media literate. I need you to check multiple sources. Don't take my word for it. Go check it on somebody else. And I'm okay with that. But please do that. Because we vote too. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Till next time. Millennial. Peace sign.
They say democracy dies in darkness. But what if democracy is dying in broad daylight while we're all watching, scrolling, and trying to keep the lights on in our own lives? We're tired. Tired of being told that every 2 to 4 years our whole future is on the line. Meanwhile, nothing seems to change. Rights roll back, prices go up, the people we vote for disappear. But I need you to hear this. This is still our fight. Not because democracy is perfect or even fair, but because every time we show up in the voting booth, at the school board meeting, at the dinner table, online, and in protest, we're doing more than just defending democracy. We're redefining it. Democracy isn't just about a president. It's about whether your kid has clean water, whether your grandma can afford her prescriptions or Wi-Fi, whether your neighbor's vote counts the same as yours. It's about who gets heard, who gets help, and who gets left out. So yeah, the system is fucking cracked, maybe even broken. But the people, we're not. We're still here, still pushing, still building. If you've been feeling hopeless, let this be your reminder. We don't need perfect conditions to fight for a better world. We just need each other. And maybe, just maybe, a little more courage than comfort. So whether you're voting, volunteering, organizing, or just surviving, that counts. That's democracy too. I'm Leise Winny, and I'm not giving up, because if democracy lives anywhere, it lives in us. Until next season, stay sharp, stay loud, and stay free. Because we vote too.